The morning light poured through the wide windows of the command center, casting long beams across rows of digital displays, tactical maps, and the focused faces of military personnel. Lieutenant Samantha Mitchell moved with swift precision through the room, her footsteps barely audible against the backdrop of muted conversations and electronic beeps. At 23, she was the youngest intelligence officer on the base, a fact that everyone seemed determined to remind her of daily. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Sam adjusted her uniform and smoothed back a strand of dark hair that had escaped her regulation bun. Though her uniform was crisp and her posture perfect, the sidelong glances and whispered comments followed her like shadows. She kept her gaze forward, focused on the task at hand, delivering critical intelligence reports to Colonel Garrison before the morning briefing. "Hey, rookie." "The daycare center's on the other side of the base," called Staff Sergeant Miller, loud enough for everyone to hear. A ripple of laughter spread through the command center. Sam didn't respond. She'd learned that engaging only encouraged them. 6 months into her first deployment at Fort Hawkins, she'd developed a thick skin against the constant jabs about her age, her size, and the presumed nepotism that had gotten her this posting right out of the academy. "Seriously, Mitchell, did you remember to get your permission slip signed for this field trip?" Lieutenant Davidson added, nudging his companion and smirking. "I think there's a height requirement for intelligence work." At 5'4", Sam was used to the height jokes too. She continued toward Colonel Garrison's office, the intelligence folder clutched firmly against her chest. Her boots were quieter than the rest, her presence somehow diminished in a room full of raised voices and clattering equipment. It wasn't that she was ignored. It was that she'd become the perpetual punchline. The intelligence she carried could potentially save lives, yet all anyone saw was a young woman who looked like she should still be in college. Her advanced degrees in cryptography and 4 languages meant nothing against the perceived sin of her youth. $10 says she cries before lunch," whispered Specialist Zhang to Corporal Ramirez as Sam passed. "She's wound so tight." 20 says she asks to call her mom," Ramirez replied, not bothering to lower his voice. Sam reached Colonel Garrison's office door and knocked firmly, twice. When she heard the gruff, "Enter," she squared her shoulders and stepped inside, closing the door on the snickering behind her. Colonel Garrison was reviewing reports at his desk, reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. He looked up briefly. "Lieutenant Mitchell." "The intelligence briefs?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Yes, sir." She placed the folder on his desk and stood at attention. "The overnight intercepts are complete, with annotations on the significant communications from Sector 7. There's increased chatter that suggests—" "I can read, Lieutenant," he interrupted, barely looking at her. "Anything else?" Sam hesitated. There was something else. A pattern she'd noticed that wasn't explicitly documented in the reports. It was the kind of intuitive leap that came from hours of immersion in the data, from connecting seemingly unrelated pieces of information. "Sir, I believe there may be indications of—" "Mitchell, I've been analyzing intelligence since before you were born. I think I can interpret the data without your amateur insights." She felt her chest tighten but kept her expression neutral. "Yes, sir. Will that be all?" He nodded dismissively, already turning back to his papers. "That will be all, Lieutenant. Close the door on your way out." Sam exited, her face a careful mask of professionalism. The command center had gotten busier, with the morning shift change bringing in fresh personnel. On the main display screen, she could see a tactical map of the region, with markers indicating recent activities. Something about the pattern of movements in the southwestern quadrant caught her attention. It matched the communications anomaly she'd been tracking. She moved toward the tactical station, where Captain Rivera was bringing the incoming team up to speed. "Excuse me, Captain. I noticed something about the southwestern movement patterns that correlates with—" Rivera cut her off with a raised hand. "Not now, Mitchell. We're in the middle of a shift briefing." "But, sir, I think it's significant. The pattern suggests—" "Lieutenant," Rivera's voice sharpened, "when I want the analysis of someone fresh out of diapers, I'll let you know. Until then, stick to your assigned duties." More laughter rippled through the nearby personnel, Sam took a small step back, clutching her tablet. Yes, sir. She returned to her workstation, aware of the eyes following her, the smirks barely hidden behind hands. She sat down and pulled up the data again, convinced that what she was seeing mattered. The communications intercepts, when overlaid with the movement patterns, revealed a coordinated effort that no one else seemed to have noticed. Major Lewis, the base executive officer, walked past her station. Sam straightened immediately. Major, if I could have a moment of your time. Lewis glanced at her with thinly veiled impatience. What is it, Lieutenant? Sir, I've identified a pattern in the southwestern quadrant that suggests a coordinated. Mitchell, isn't decryption your assignment? Focus on your actual job instead of trying to impress everyone with theories above your pay grade. He continued walking without waiting for her response. Sam returned to her screen, frustration building behind her carefully maintained composure. The data was clear to her. Why couldn't they see it? Was it really because she was young, or was she missing something? Specialist Zhang rolled his chair over to her station. Don't take it personally, baby lieutenant. They're just making sure you learn your place in the pecking order. I'm trying to do my job, Sam replied, keeping her voice even. Your job is to follow orders and not rock the boat. Trust me, I've been here 3 years longer than you. These guys don't want innovation from newbies, especially not from a newbie who looks like she should be at prom instead of a military base. Sam turned back to her screen. I appreciate the advice, specialist, but I need to complete my work. Zhang shrugged and rolled back to his station. Don't say I didn't warn you. The morning dragged on, with Sam completing her assigned decryption tasks while continuing to track the pattern she'd identified. By lunchtime, she had compiled enough evidence to be absolutely certain. There was a coordinated operation happening in the southwestern quadrant, and it represented a potential threat to Allied forces. She printed her findings and headed back to Colonel Garrison's office. This time, she was stopped by his assistant. He's in a meeting, Lieutenant. It'll have to wait. This is time-sensitive intelligence, Sergeant. It needs immediate attention. The assistant looked her up and down, his expression skeptical. I'll make sure he gets it when he's available. Sam reluctantly handed over the folder. Please emphasize that this indicates a potential imminent threat. Sure thing, Lieutenant. I'll be sure to tell him it's super important kindergarten intelligence. He smirked and set the folder on his desk. Sam clenched her jaw and walked away. In the mess hall, she sat alone, picking at her food while reviewing the data on her tablet once more. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice Captain Winter's approach until she set her tray down across from her. Mind if I join you, Lieutenant? Sam looked up in surprise. Captain Elena Winters was the combat systems officer, well respected and known for her no-nonsense approach. Of course not, ma'am. Winters sat down and studied Sam for a moment. You've been causing quite a stir this morning. Sam's heart sank. I was just trying to... Do your job, I know. Winters took a bite of her sandwich. Tell me about this pattern you've identified. Sam blinked, caught off guard by the captain's interest. After a moment's hesitation, she turned her tablet so Winters could see the screen. These communications intercepts, when correlated with these movement patterns, suggest a coordinated operation. The timing and positioning indicate they're preparing for something significant in the next 24 to 48 hours. Winters studied the screen, her expression thoughtful. And you've presented this to Colonel Garrison? I tried, ma'am. And to Major Lewis and Captain Rivera. Let me guess. They dismissed you without really looking at the evidence. Sam hesitated, not wanting to criticize her superior officers. They suggested I focus on my assigned tasks. Winters nodded, unsurprised. This base has a bad habit of confusing experience with expertise. Just because someone's been doing something for 20 years doesn't mean they've been doing it well for 20 years. She pushed her tray aside. Show me everything you've got. For the next 15 minutes, Sam walked Captain Winters through her analysis, pointing out the correlations, the unusual timing patterns, and the significance of certain communications fragments. When she finished, Winters was silent for a long moment. This is solid work, Mitchell. The kind of pattern recognition that can't be taught. She stood up. Bring everything you have to the command center in 30 minutes. And brace yourself. This isn't going to be a smooth ride. Sam returned to her workstation, gathering all her data and analyses. Her stomach was in knots, a mixture of vindication and anxiety. Captain Winters believed her, but would that be enough to convince everyone else? 30 minutes later, the command center was buzzing with activity. Base Commander Harrison had arrived for the afternoon briefing, and officers were gathering around the central tactical display. Sam spotted Captain Winters near the commander and made her way toward them, data folder in hand. "With all due respect, Captain, we already have our intelligence assessment for today," Colonel Garrison was saying as Sam approached. "I don't see the need to revisit it based on some junior officer's pet theory." "It's not a theory, Colonel," Winters replied firmly. "It's an analysis based on concrete data that you've overlooked." Commander Harrison, a stern-faced man in his 50s, looked between them. "What's this about, Captain?" Before Winters could respond, Sam stepped forward. "Sir, I've identified a pattern indicating a coordinated operation in the southwestern quadrant. It represents a potential imminent threat to our forward operating bases." The commander turned to her, his eyebrows raised slightly. "And you are?" "Lieutenant Samantha Mitchell, sir. Intelligence Division." Colonel Garrison stepped forward. "Commander, Lieutenant Mitchell is a recent Academy graduate. She's been assigned to basic decryption duties. This theory of hers is outside her scope of responsibility." "I see." Commander Harrison's gaze was evaluating. "And yet Captain Winters thinks it merits attention." "I've reviewed her analysis, sir," Winters said. "It's sound and potentially critical." Major Lewis joined the group, his expression disapproving. "Commander? With all due respect, we have established intelligence protocols. Lieutenant Mitchell is bypassing the chain of command and presenting uncorroborated analyses." The commander held up a hand. "I'd like to see this analysis." Sam handed him the folder, acutely aware of the audience they'd attracted. Nearly everyone in the command center was watching now, many with barely concealed smirks. She could practically feel the collective expectation of her humiliation. Commander Harrison reviewed the documents silently, his expression unreadable. After what felt like an eternity, he looked up at Colonel Garrison. "You dismiss this?" Garrison shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, it seemed speculative at best. And Lieutenant Mitchell lacks the field experience to—" "To what, Colonel?" "To recognize a clear pattern of enemy movement? To correlate communications with tactical positioning?" The commander's voice was deceptively calm. "Because from what I'm seeing, she's done exactly that, and done it well." A hush fell over the command center. Sam stood perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. Commander Harrison turned to face the room. "Attention, everyone. Effective immediately, we're implementing Alert Level Delta based on Lieutenant Mitchell's intelligence assessment. I want communications monitoring increased in the southwestern quadrant and preemptive defensive measures at FO Base 7 and 9. Colonel Garrison's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "Sir, with all due respect, that was not a suggestion, Colonel." The commander's voice cut like steel. "Lieutenant Mitchell has identified a critical intelligence pattern that your entire division missed. I expect your full cooperation in addressing this threat." He turned back to Sam. "Lieutenant, I'd like you to brief the tactical team on your findings. They need to understand exactly what we're looking at." "Yes, sir," Sam managed, her voice steadier than she felt. The commander nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing." He looked around the room, his gaze sweeping over the now silent officers. "Lieutenant Mitchell outranks all of you in one critical area: the ability to see what's right in front of you without letting ego cloud judgment. I suggest you remember that moving forward." As Commander Harrison walked away, Sam felt the weight of dozens of stares. The mockery had been replaced by something else: surprise, reassessment, and in some cases resentment. Captain Winters gave her a small nod of approval before following the commander. Colonel Garrison cleared his throat. "Lieutenant Mitchell, prepare your briefing materials for the tactical team. We'll convene in 15 minutes." His tone was clipped, professional, with no trace of the dismissiveness from earlier. "Yes, sir." Sam replied, already moving toward her workstation. As she walked, Lieutenant Davidson stepped into her path. "Lucky guess, Mitchell. Don't let it go to your head." Sam met his gaze evenly. "It wasn't luck, Lieutenant. It was doing my job." She stepped around him and continued walking, her back straight and her steps sure. For the first time since arriving at Fort Hawkins, Sam felt visible, not as a target for jokes or a curiosity to be dismissed, but as an intelligence officer whose work mattered. The mockery might not end today, the disrespect might linger, but something fundamental had shifted. As she prepared her briefing, Sam thought about all the hours she'd spent studying, training, pushing herself to excel in a field where youth was considered a liability rather than an asset. Today, those hours had paid off, not just for her career, but potentially for the lives of soldiers who would now be prepared for what was coming. The real test would come in the next 24 hours, when they would discover if her analysis was correct. But for now, for this moment, Lieutenant Samantha Mitchell had earned something that couldn't be granted by rank or time in service: respect. And as she stood at the tactical display, explaining her findings to a room full of officers who now listened intently to every word, Sam realized that sometimes being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. They had seen her youth and dismissed her. They had never bothered to look deeper, to see the mind behind the young face. Commander Harrison had changed that with 8 simple words. She outranks all of you in one critical area. Now they were seeing her, really seeing her, for the first time. The command center buzzed with a new energy as Sam stood at the tactical display, explaining the intelligence pattern she'd discovered. Officers who had mocked her hours earlier now leaned forward, eyes fixed on the screen as she traced the movements and communication patterns that had triggered her concern. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." Based on these intercepts and movement patterns, Sam continued, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "I project a coordinated operation targeting our supply routes to FOB 7 and FOB 9 within the next 18 to 24 hours. The pattern suggests multiple simultaneous strikes designed to cut off our forward bases from resupply." Colonel Garrison, standing to the side with arms crossed, cleared his throat. "And what tactical response would you recommend, Lieutenant?" His tone was professional now, if not entirely warm. Sam met his gaze directly. "Sir, I believe we should reroute tomorrow's supply convoys through these alternative passages." She highlighted several mountain paths on the map. "They're less direct but offer better defensive positions. Additionally, we should deploy reconnaissance drones to these 3 locations where I believe the enemy is staging." Captain Rivera raised an eyebrow. "Those mountain paths are barely navigable. The convoys would be vulnerable to ambush. Less vulnerable than they would be on the main routes." Sam countered. "The narrow passages actually work to our advantage if we position security teams at these elevated points." She marked several locations on the map. Small teams with sniper capabilities could provide coverage while remaining relatively concealed. Commander Harrison, who had returned to observe the briefing, nodded slightly. "It's a sound strategy. Captain Winters, coordinate with transport to reroute the convoys." "Major Lewis, I want drone surveillance on those staging areas within the hour." "Yes, sir," Winters replied, already moving toward the communication station. Major Lewis hesitated. "Sir, with all due respect, we're committing significant resources based on a theory that hasn't been, a theory that your entire intelligence division missed, Major." Harrison interrupted. "Sometimes fresh eyes see what experienced ones overlook. Make it happen." As the briefing concluded and officers dispersed to their stations, Sam gathered her materials, acutely aware of the shifting dynamic in the room. The open mockery had ceased, replaced by something more complex. Reluctant reassessment from some, resentment from others, and from a few, a newfound respect. Lieutenant Davidson approached as she was organizing her notes. "Not bad, Mitchell," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "Where'd you learn to spot patterns like that?" Sam considered him for a moment. "Advanced cryptographic analysis at the Academy. Plus 3 years of competitive chess before that." She gathered her tablet. Pattern recognition is pattern recognition, whether it's on a chessboard or a battlefield. Davidson's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. Huh. Well, don't get cocky. One good call doesn't make you an expert. Never said it did. Sam met his gaze evenly, but it doesn't make me a joke either. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Before Davidson could respond, Captain Winters called across the room. Mitchell, I need you at the communications station. We're coordinating with the convoy teams. Sam nodded to Davidson and walked away, leaving him with a slightly perplexed expression. As she joined Winters at the communications console, the captain gave her an approving nod. Well handled, Winters murmured. You've got them reassessing their assumptions, which is half the battle. Thank you for believing me, ma'am, Sam said quietly as they reviewed the convoy routes. Winters glanced at her. I didn't believe you because I like you, Lieutenant. I believed you because your analysis was solid. Never forget the difference. For the next several hours, Sam worked alongside Winters, coordinating with transport teams and security personnel to implement the rerouting plan. The rest of the command center operated with heightened alertness, preparing for the potential threat her intelligence had identified. As evening approached, Commander Harrison called her to his office. Colonel Garrison was already there when she arrived, his posture stiff and expression carefully neutral. Lieutenant Mitchell, Harrison gestured to a chair. Sit down. Colonel Garrison and I have been discussing your analysis and the operational changes we've implemented in response. Sam sat, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. Yes, sir. Colonel Garrison has raised some valid concerns about the resource allocation required for your recommended strategy. Harrison's tone gave nothing away. He believes we may be overreacting to an intelligence assessment that, while compelling, remains unproven. Garrison shifted slightly. My concern, Lieutenant, is that we're diverting critical resources based on a pattern that could be coincidental. The mountain routes are difficult terrain for our convoys, and the security positioning you've suggested stretches our personnel thin. Sam felt a familiar sinking sensation. They were going to reverse course, undo all the preparations, and when the attack came, if she was right, people would die. Sir, she began carefully, I understand the resource concerns, but let me finish, Lieutenant. Harrison interrupted. Colonel Garrison has expressed these concerns, and they're legitimate from an operational standpoint. He paused, studying her. However, I've decided to maintain our current course of action. Sam blinked in surprise. Sir? Your analysis is too compelling to ignore, even with the resource constraints. Moreover, the first drone reconnaissance reports are coming in. Harrison turned his monitor so she could see it. These images were captured 30 minutes ago at one of your suggested locations. The screen showed thermal imaging of a small encampment hidden among trees. Multiple heat signatures indicated personnel and vehicles. That's exactly where I predicted, Sam said softly. Yes, it is. Harrison's expression remained serious. We're still awaiting reports from the other locations, but this initial confirmation suggests your assessment was correct. Colonel Garrison and I agree that continuing with your recommended strategy is prudent. Garrison's expression suggested he might not entirely agree, but he nodded nonetheless. The evidence supports your analysis, Lieutenant. I may have been hasty in dismissing it earlier. Coming from Garrison, it was practically an effusive apology. Sam nodded in acknowledgement. Thank you, sir. That said, Harrison continued, I want you to understand the responsibility that comes with this level of influence. Lives are at stake, resources are being committed, and the entire operational posture of this base has shifted based on your assessment. I understand, sir. Do you? Harrison leaned forward. Because many officers twice your age struggle with that weight. It's not just about being right, Lieutenant. It's about what happens when you're wrong, and people die because of it. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Sam swallowed hard but met his gaze. Yes, sir. I understand that my analysis has consequences. That's why I was so persistent, because I believed those consequences would be far worse if we didn't act. Harrison studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Good. You'll remain on duty through the night. I want you monitoring communications and updating the tactical team as new intelligence comes in. Yes, sir. And Lieutenant? Harrison added as she stood to leave. Well done. As Sam exited the commander's office, she felt the weight of both the compliment and the responsibility it carried. She wasn't just the young lieutenant anymore. She was the intelligence officer whose assessment had shifted the base's entire operational stance. The night passed in a blur of activity. Additional drone reconnaissance confirmed enemy presence at all 3 locations she had identified. Communication intercepts increased, further validating her analysis. By dawn, the command center was operating at full capacity, tracking the diverted convoys and monitoring the predicted threat zones. Sam had been awake for nearly 24 hours, sustained by coffee, and the laser focus that came with knowing lives depended on her work. She was reviewing the latest drone footage when Captain Winters approached. Mitchell, we've got movement at location 3. Multiple vehicles mobilizing. Sam straightened immediately, following Winters to the tactical display. The thermal imaging showed a convoy of vehicles moving out from the hidden encampment. They're heading toward the main supply route, Sam observed. Exactly as predicted. Major Lewis joined them, his earlier skepticism replaced by grudging acknowledgement. Our convoys are safely on the mountain routes. ETA to FOB-7 is 90 minutes. And the enemy? Harrison asked, approaching the display. Moving into position along the main route, Sam replied. They appear to be setting up in these 3 locations, classic ambush points. She highlighted areas on the map where the road narrowed between rock formations. If our convoys had taken the usual route, Lewis began, they'd be driving into a kill zone. Winters finished grimly. Commander Harrison nodded. Tactical options? We have 2 choices, sir, Sam said, thinking quickly. We can let them sit there and waste their resources, or we can use this opportunity to neutralize the threat. Elaborate, Harrison ordered. Sam highlighted several points on the map. We have helicopter gunships at our disposal. With the enemy concentrated in these ambush positions, they're actually vulnerable to air assault. They're expecting to engage ground vehicles, not air support. Harrison considered this for a moment. They'll scatter as soon as they spot our helicopters. Not if we use the terrain to our advantage, Sam countered, zooming in on the map. These ridgelines provide a natural approach that would keep our helicopters below their line of sight until the last moment. A coordinated strike from multiple directions would maximize the element of surprise. The commander studied the map, then looked at Colonel Garrison. Your assessment, Colonel? Garrison examined the tactical display, his expression thoughtful. Lieutenant Mitchell's strategy is sound. The terrain does provide excellent cover for approach, and the enemy is concentrated in a way that makes them vulnerable. Very well. Captain Winters, coordinate with air support. I want those helicopters in the air within 20 minutes. Major Lewis, ensure our convoy security teams are prepared for any scattered enemy elements that might flee toward the mountain routes. Yes, sir, they responded in unison. As the command center mobilized for the operation, Lieutenant Davidson approached Sam. You're really going for it, aren't you, Mitchell? First, the intelligence call. Now, tactical recommendations? Sam didn't take her eyes off the display. Just doing my job, Lieutenant. Yeah, well... Davidson hesitated. It's good work. Not many people would have seen this coming. Before Sam could respond, the radio crackled with reports from the field teams. The enemy forces were holding position, still unaware that their ambush had been avoided. The helicopter gunships were preparing for takeoff. For the next hour, Sam remained glued to the tactical display, watching as the operation unfolded exactly as she had outlined. The helicopters approached along the concealed ridge lines, emerging simultaneously to catch the enemy in a devastating crossfire. The ambush had become the ambushed. Enemy forces neutralized, reported the lead pilot. Minimal resistance encountered. We count 12 vehicles disabled and approximately 30 personnel either surrendered or neutralized. A cheer went up in the command center. Colonel Garrison nodded to Sam with newfound respect. "Excellent work, Lieutenant." "Our convoys?" Harrison asked. "Proceeding safely to Fob 7 and Fob 9, Major Lewis reported. ETA 45 minutes with no threats detected along the route. Commander Harrison turned to address the room. "Outstanding execution, everyone. This operation has neutralized a significant threat to our supply lines and forward operating bases." Quote, he looked directly at Sam. "Lieutenant Mitchell's intelligence assessment and tactical recommendations were instrumental to this success. This is what happens when we listen to good intelligence, regardless of where it comes from." The acknowledgement sent a ripple through the command center. Officers who had dismissed Sam just a day earlier now looked at her with new eyes. The rookie lieutenant had just coordinated an operation that saved lives and eliminated a major threat. As the immediate crisis subsided and the command center returned to normal operations, Sam finally took a moment to catch her breath. She hadn't slept in over 24 hours, and the adrenaline that had kept her going was beginning to fade. Captain Winters found her at her workstation, reviewing the after-action reports. "Go get some rest, Mitchell. You've earned it." Sam looked up, exhaustion evident in her eyes despite her efforts to hide it. "I should finish these reports first, ma'am." "That's an order, Lieutenant," Winters said firmly. "You can't serve effectively if you're running on fumes. 4 hours of sleep, then you can return to duty." "Yes, ma'am." Sam stood, suddenly aware of how tired she truly was. As she made her way toward the door, she passed a group of officers who had been among her most vocal critics. They fell silent as she approached. Then Specialist Zhang spoke up. "Hey, Mitchell. Some of us are having a drink in the rec room tonight to celebrate the operation's success. You should join us." Sam paused, surprised by the invitation. "I'll try to make it. Thank you." It wasn't an apology for the mockery, but it was an acknowledgement, a small step toward acceptance. As she walked to her quarters, Sam reflected on how quickly things had changed. Yesterday she had been the joke of the command center. Today, she was being invited to celebrate with the same people who had ridiculed her. She set her alarm for 4 hours later, collapsed onto her bed, and was asleep almost instantly. Her dreams were a jumble of tactical displays, drone footage, and the faces of officers who had gone from mocking her to respecting her in the span of a day. When she awoke, she felt marginally refreshed but still tired. A quick shower helped restore some energy, and she dressed in a fresh uniform before heading back to the command center. The atmosphere had changed subtly. Officers nodded to her as she passed, some offering quiet congratulations or acknowledgments. She made her way to her workstation, where a stack of intelligence reports awaited her review. Colonel Garrison approached as she was settling in. "Lieutenant Mitchell, a moment of your time." "Yes, sir." She followed him to a quiet corner of the command center. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "I dismissed your analysis without giving it proper consideration, and that was a failure of leadership on my part." Sam was momentarily speechless. Of all the outcomes she had anticipated from yesterday's events, a direct apology from Colonel Garrison hadn't been one of them. "Thank you, sir," she managed. "I understand why my assessment might have seemed presumptuous." Garrison shook his head. "Age and experience are poor substitutes for insight and intelligence. You demonstrated both yesterday." He paused. "Commander Harrison has requested that you be assigned to the senior intelligence team, reporting directly to me. Would that arrangement be acceptable to you?" Yes, sir, absolutely." "Good. Report to the senior briefing room at 0800 tomorrow. The team will be analyzing potential fallout from yesterday's operation." He hesitated, then added, "Your perspective will be valuable." As Garrison walked away, Sam felt a strange mix of vindication and unease. The promotion to the senior intelligence team was a significant recognition of her abilities. But it also meant increased scrutiny and higher expectations. The weight of responsibility that Commander Harrison had spoken of settled more firmly on her shoulders. Throughout the remainder of her shift, Sam focused on analyzing the communications and equipment captured during the operation. The intelligence painted a concerning picture. The ambush had been part of a larger campaign targeting multiple supply routes. Her initial assessment had identified only one aspect of a more complex threat. By the time she finished her shift, she had compiled a comprehensive report outlining the broader pattern and its implications. Tomorrow, she would present it to the senior intelligence team, a prospect that was both exciting and intimidating. As promised, she made her way to the rec room that evening. The celebration was already underway, with officers gathered in small groups, drinks in hand, reliving the day's success. Captain Winters spotted her first and waved her over. "Mitchell, just in time. We were just discussing your tactical recommendation for the helicopter approach. Brilliant use of the terrain." Sam accepted the non-alcoholic drink Winters offered her. "Thank you, ma'am. The ridgelines provided perfect cover for approach." "That's what I was saying," Lieutenant Davidson chimed in. "Most people would have gone for a direct assault, but using the terrain to mask the approach until the last moment, that was inspired." Sam sipped her drink, still adjusting to the strange new reality where her ideas were being praised rather than dismissed. It seemed like the logical approach, given the circumstances. "Logical," she says. Specialist Jong laughed, as if everyone would have seen it. "Give yourself some credit, Mitchell." The conversation flowed easily after that, with Sam gradually relaxing into the camaraderie. These same officers who had mocked her youth and inexperience were now treating her as a valued colleague. The transformation was as disorienting as it was gratifying. Later, as the celebration began to wind down, Commander Harrison made a brief appearance. The room quieted as he entered, officers straightening reflexively in his presence. "As you were," he said, waving away the formality. "I just wanted to stop by and express my appreciation for everyone's efforts today. It was an exemplary operation that prevented potential casualties and secured our supply lines." His gaze found Sam in the crowd. "Lieutenant Mitchell, a word?" She set down her drink and followed him to a quieter corner of the room. "I've reviewed your additional report on the broader threat pattern," he said without preamble. "Your analysis suggests this was just one component of a coordinated campaign." "Yes, sir. The intelligence recovered today points to at least 3 more potential operations targeting our logistics infrastructure." Harrison nodded thoughtfully. "I've scheduled a command-level briefing for 0700 tomorrow. I'd like you to present your findings directly." Sam swallowed hard. A command-level briefing meant addressing all the senior officers on the base, a significant step up from the tactical team briefing she had given yesterday. "I'll be prepared, sir." "I know you will." Harrison studied her for a moment. "You've come a long way in 24 hours, Lieutenant. From being dismissed as too young and inexperienced to briefing the command staff. How does that feel?" Sam considered the question carefully. "Validating, sir, but also sobering. I understand now what you meant about the weight of responsibility." "Good, because it only gets heavier from here." He glanced around the room at the celebrating officers. "They respect you now, but respect is a double-edged sword. It comes with expectations." "I understand, sir." Harrison nodded. "Get some rest, Lieutenant. Tomorrow will be another test, and I expect you to be at your best." As the commander left, Sam rejoined the group. Her mind already shifting to the briefing ahead, the celebration continued around her, but she was increasingly aware of the transition taking place. From the rookie lieutenant who had been ridiculed for her youth, to the intelligence officer whose analysis had saved lives and altered the operational stance of the entire base. The path ahead would not be easy. Respect earned could still be lost, and the burden of responsibility would only grow heavier. But for the first time since arriving at Fort Hawkins, Lieutenant Samantha Mitchell felt like she belonged, not despite her youth, but because of what she had proven she could do regardless of it. The mockery had ceased, replaced by a newfound respect that she had earned through competence, insight, and the courage to stand by her convictions when no one else believed in her. It was a transformation that went beyond personal vindication. It was a reminder that true respect comes not from age or rank, but from ability and character. As she looked around at the officers who had once dismissed her, now including her in their celebration, Sam knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges. But she would face them with the confidence of someone who had already overcome the most difficult obstacle of all, being seen for who she truly was, rather than judged for how young she appeared to be. The command center hummed with activity as Sam prepared for the command-level briefing. Her dress uniform felt stiff and formal after days in her regular fatigues, but she understood the significance of the occasion. This wasn't just another intelligence update. It was her formal introduction to the base's senior leadership. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Commander Harrison had given her 30 minutes to present her findings on the broader threat pattern. 30 minutes to convince a room full of senior officers that her analysis was sound, and her recommendations worth implementing. The pressure was immense, but Sam found herself surprisingly calm. After the events of the past 2 days, this felt like a natural progression rather than an insurmountable challenge. Lieutenant Mitchell. Captain Winters appeared at her side, offering a folder of printed materials. These are the latest intercepts from Sector 9. They came in an hour ago and support your pattern analysis. Sam accepted the folder gratefully. Thank you, ma'am. This helps confirm the northeastern movement I was tracking. Winters nodded, then lowered her voice. Word of advice, Colonel Richards from Special Operations will be there. He's skeptical of intelligence that doesn't come from his own team. Be prepared for tough questions. Understood. Sam tucked the new intelligence into her presentation materials. Any other landmines I should be aware of? Just be your straightforward self, Winters replied. The data speaks for itself. And remember, they may have more experience, but right now, you have more insight. That's what matters today. At precisely 0700, Sam entered the command briefing room. A long table dominated the center, surrounded by 12 chairs occupied by the base's senior leadership. Commander Harrison sat at the head, with Colonel Garrison to his right. The other seats were filled with officers Sam had only seen in passing, department heads and operational commanders whose decisions shaped the entire base's activities. Lieutenant Mitchell, Harrison nodded to her. The floor is yours. Sam moved to the front of the room, setting up her materials on the podium. She took a deep breath, remembering Winters' advice. Be straightforward. Let the data speak. Good morning, sirs, ma'am. She nodded to the officers. 2 days ago, I identified a pattern in enemy communications and movements that indicated a planned ambush of our supply convoys. That intelligence led to a successful counterstrike that neutralized the threat and secured our supply lines. She activated the tactical display, showing a map of the region. What we've discovered since then is that this wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a coordinated campaign targeting our entire logistics infrastructure. For the next 20 minutes, Sam laid out her analysis with methodical precision. She showed how the communication patterns revealed multiple planned operations, each targeting different aspects of the base's supply network. The ambush they had thwarted was just the opening move in a much larger strategy. Based on the intelligence recovered during yesterday's operation, I've identified 3 additional planned strikes. She highlighted locations on the map. Here, at the Davin River crossing where our fuel supplies transit. Here, at the northeastern airstrip where medical supplies are received. And here, at the main depot where ammunition is stored before distribution. Colonel Richards, a stern-faced man with salt and pepper hair, leaned forward. That's a bold assessment, Lieutenant. What makes you certain these aren't decoy communications meant to distract us from their actual targets? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. It was exactly the kind of challenge Winters had warned her about. Sam nodded respectfully. A valid concern, sir. 3 factors suggest these are genuine targets. First, the operational details in the communications are too specific to be decoys. They include timing, personnel requirements, and equipment specifications. Second, our surveillance has confirmed unusual activity at all 3 locations, consistent with pre-operation reconnaissance. And third, she pulled out the folder Winters had given her. These intercepts from Sector 9, received just this morning, include communications between field commanders discussing specific vulnerabilities at these exact locations. She distributed copies of the translated intercepts. The room fell silent as the officers reviewed the new intelligence. Commander Harrison broke the silence. Your recommendations, Lieutenant? A 3-pronged approach, sir. Sam returned to the tactical display. First, enhanced security at all 3 locations, but implemented quietly to avoid alerting the enemy that we're aware of their plans. Second, false vulnerabilities, making it appear that certain routes or facilities are less protected than they actually are to channel their operations in directions we can control. And third, preparation for a coordinated counterstrike, similar to yesterday's operation, but on a larger scale. Colonel Richards was studying the intercepts, his expression thoughtful. The level of coordination this would require from the enemy is significant. Are we certain they have these capabilities? The evidence suggests they do, sir. Sam highlighted several communication nodes on the display. Their command structure has evolved over the past 3 months. They're using more sophisticated encryption and demonstrating improved operational security. Yesterday's ambush attempt showed precise timing and positioning that we haven't seen from them before. Major Thompson, the logistics commander, spoke up. If Lieutenant Mitchell's assessment is accurate, my supply operations are at severe risk. I'd like to implement her security recommendations immediately. Agreed, Colonel Garrison added, surprising Sam with his support. The intelligence is compelling, and the risk of inaction is too high. Commander Harrison looked around the table. Any objections to proceeding with Lieutenant Mitchell's recommendations? Colonel Richards studied Sam for a long moment before responding. No objection. The assessment is sound, and the plan is strategically viable. He nodded to Sam. Good work, Lieutenant. Thank you, sir. Very well, Harrison concluded. Major Thompson, coordinate with Lieutenant Mitchell on implementing the enhanced security measures. Colonel Garrison, begin preparations for the counterstrike operation. I want options on my desk by 1600 hours. He looked at Sam. Lieutenant, you'll continue to lead the intelligence analysis for this operation. Work with both teams to ensure they have everything they need. Yes, sir. As the meeting adjourned, Sam gathered her materials, aware that she had just passed a significant milestone. She had presented to the base's senior leadership and had her recommendations approved without reservation. A far cry from being dismissed as too young and inexperienced just days ago. Colonel Richards approached as she was packing up. Mitchell, isn't it? Yes, sir. She straightened immediately. Walk with me. He gestured toward the door. They moved into the corridor, away from the dispersing officers. Richard studied her with an evaluating gaze that made Sam feel like she was being assessed for something beyond the immediate operation. Your analysis was impressive, he said finally. Few intelligence officers, regardless of age or experience, would have connected those dots so effectively. Thank you, sir. I understand you were something of a prodigy at the academy. Top of your class in cryptography, advanced pattern recognition, and 4 languages. Sam blinked in surprise. She hadn't realized her academy record was common knowledge among the senior staff. Yes, sir. And yet, when you arrived here, you were assigned to basic decryption duties. It wasn't a question, but his tone invited explanation. That's correct, sir. Richards nodded thoughtfully. A waste of talent in retrospect, though perhaps a valuable lesson in patience for you. He paused. My special operations team works closely with intelligence officers who can think several moves ahead, people who see patterns where others see only noise. We have an opening that I believe would suit your capabilities. Sam felt a surge of excitement that she tried to keep from showing on her face. The Special Operations Intelligence Unit was an elite assignment, typically reserved for officers with years of field experience. I'm honored by your considerations, sir. Don't be honored yet, Richards cautioned. It's demanding work with high stakes and little room for error. But if you're interested, come see me after this operation is concluded. I will, sir, thank you. As Richards walked away, Sam took a moment to absorb what had just happened. From being ridiculed as too young to be taken seriously to being recruited for an elite intelligence unit, all in the span of 3 days. The transformation was dizzying. Her reflections were interrupted by Major Thompson approaching from the briefing room. Lieutenant Mitchell, I'd like to review your security recommendations for the supply routes. My team is preparing to implement them immediately. Of course, sir. Sam fell into step beside him, shifting her focus back to the operation at hand. For the next several hours, she worked with Thompson's logistics team, detailing the security measures needed to protect the vulnerable supply points. The Major was receptive to her ideas, treating her with the respect of a valued colleague rather than a junior officer to be tolerated. "Your understanding of our logistics operations is impressive," Thompson commented as they finalized the plans. "Most intelligence officers see only the strategic implications, not the practical realities of moving supplies through hostile territory." "I spent 6 months studying logistics during my final year at the academy," Sam explained. "I believe you can't secure what you don't understand." Thompson nodded approvingly. "A philosophy more officers should adopt. We've had too many security protocols designed by people who've never loaded a transport or navigated a supply route." By mid-afternoon, Sam had shifted to working with Colonel Garrison's team, developing the counterstrike operation. The dynamics here were different. Garrison was professional but reserved, still adjusting to the reversal of their previous relationship. "Your input on the enemy's likely response patterns would be valuable," he said as they reviewed the operational plans. "Based on the communications you've analyzed, how do you anticipate they'll react when they realize we're onto them?" Sam studied the tactical display. "They'll prioritize the ammunition depot operation. It's their highest value target, and the communications suggest it's being led by their most experienced commander." She highlighted several positions on the map. "If pressed, they'll likely abandon the other 2 operations to ensure the ammunition depot strike succeeds. That gives us an opportunity to draw them into a trap," Garrison finished, following her logic. "We make them think the depot operation is succeeding, lure them fully into position, then spring the counterstrike." "Exactly, sir. Their communications indicate they're ready to commit significant resources to that target. If we can appear vulnerable there while actually being prepared, we can potentially neutralize a large portion of their operational capacity in a single engagement." Garrison nodded slowly, a newfound respect evident in his expression. "Draft the tactical approach for this strategy. I want to review it before we present options to Commander Harrison." For the next 2 hours, Sam worked alongside the tactical team, developing a comprehensive plan for the counter-operation. The officers who had once dismissed her now sought her input, included her in their discussions, and incorporated her suggestions into their planning. At 1,600 hours, they presented their options to Commander Harrison. 3 potential approaches were outlined, with Sam's trap strategy prominently featured as the recommended course of action. Harrison reviewed the plans carefully, asking pointed questions that tested the thoroughness of their preparation. Sam answered those related to intelligence assessment, her confidence growing with each response. "The trap strategy is bold," Harrison said finally. "It carries higher risk, but offers the greatest potential reward. If successful, it could neutralize their operational capacity for months." "That's our assessment as well, sir," Garrison confirmed. Harrison made his decision. "We'll proceed with Lieutenant Mitchell's trap strategy. Begin preparations immediately. The operation will commence at 0600 tomorrow." As the meeting concluded, Sam found herself in the strange position of being the center of attention for all the right reasons. Officers who had barely acknowledged her existence days ago now sought her out, asking questions about the operation and her assessment of the enemy's capabilities. Captain Winters appeared at her side as the crowd dispersed. "Quite a change from 3 days ago, isn't it?" Sam nodded, still processing the transformation. "It's disorienting, honestly." "Get used to it," Winters advised. "This is just the beginning. Colonel Richards doesn't offer special operations positions lightly." Sam looked at her in surprise. "How did you know about that?" Winters smiled. "Not much happens on this base that I don't hear about. It's a good opportunity, Mitchell. You should take it." "If we succeed tomorrow," Sam reminded her, "a lot can happen between now and then." "True enough." Winters' expression grew serious. "Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow will test all of us." Sam nodded, suddenly aware of the exhaustion that had been building throughout the day. The adrenaline that had carried her through the briefings and planning sessions was fading, leaving her drained. She returned to her quarters, intending to rest for a few hours before reviewing the final operation details. As she entered, she noticed a small package on her bed with a note attached. "Thought you might need this for tomorrow." Captain Winter's inside was a new tactical communication device, compact, encrypted, and typically reserved for field commanders. It was a practical gift, but the symbolism wasn't lost on Sam. She was being acknowledged as an essential part of the operation, trusted with direct communication capabilities that matched her new responsibilities. After a brief rest, Sam spent the evening reviewing every aspect of the plan, identifying potential failure points and contingencies. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. Her analysis had shaped the entire operation. If she had misinterpreted the intelligence or misjudged the enemy's intentions, lives could be lost. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Lieutenant Davidson standing there, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Davidson." She greeted him with surprise. "What can I do for you?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I wanted to speak with you before tomorrow's operation." Sam stepped back, allowing him into the small room. "What's on your mind?" Davidson took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology. When you first arrived, I was less than welcoming. I made jokes at your expense, dismissed your capabilities because of your age." "You weren't the only one," Sam pointed out. "No, but I was one of the worst." He met her gaze directly. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry." The apology caught Sam off guard. Of all the changes the past few days had brought, this was perhaps the most unexpected. "Thank you, I appreciate that." Davidson nodded. "There's something else. I've been assigned to the tactical team for tomorrow's operation. I wanted to assure you that I'll follow the plan exactly as outlined. Your strategy is solid, and I believe in it." The statement held a weight beyond the simple words. It was a declaration of trust from someone who had previously dismissed her entirely. "Thank you, Davidson. That means a lot." After he left, Sam returned to her review, but with a lighter heart. The reconciliation with Davidson represented something important. Not just personal vindication, but a genuine shift in how she was perceived by her colleagues. It wasn't about age anymore. It was about competence, insight, and the ability to perform under pressure. She eventually fell into a restless sleep, her dreams filled with tactical displays, communication intercepts, and the faces of those depending on her assessment. She awoke before her alarm, the first light of dawn just beginning to creep through her window. The command center was already bustling when she arrived at 0500. Teams were making final preparations for the operation, checking equipment and reviewing positions. Commander Harrison stood at the central tactical display, studying the deployment map. "Lieutenant Mitchell," he acknowledged her approach. "Are you ready?" "Yes, sir." She joined him at the display. "All intelligence indicators suggest the enemy is proceeding with their plan as anticipated. They're positioning for all three operations, with the heaviest concentration at the ammunition depot." Harrison nodded. "Then our trap is set. We've reinforced the depot's security while making it appear vulnerable. Supply convoys to the other two targets have been rerouted and secured. Now we wait for them to make their move." The next hour passed in tense anticipation. Sam monitored the communication intercepts, tracking the enemy's movements as they positioned for their coordinated strikes. Everything was unfolding exactly as she had predicted. At 0642, the first reports came in. "Movement detected at Target Alpha," announced the surveillance officer. "Multiple vehicles approaching the fuel crossing." Minutes later, activity at Target Bravo, personnel taking position around the airstrip perimeter. And finally, major movement at Target Charlie, full assault team approaching the ammunition depot from the south and east. Harrison looked to Sam. "Your assessment, Lieutenant?" She studied the incoming data, confirming her analysis. "They're committing to all three operations simultaneously, but the depot force is significantly larger. As predicted, that's their primary target." "Time to spring the trap," Harrison ordered. "Execute Phase 1. The command center erupted into coordinated activity as the operation commenced. Sam moved to the intelligence station, monitoring real-time data feeds and communication intercepts. The enemy had taken the bait, advancing toward the apparently vulnerable ammunition depot while smaller forces engaged at the other targets. What they didn't know was that the depot's defenses had been significantly reinforced, with security teams positioned in concealed locations around the perimeter. Meanwhile, helicopter gunships were staging just beyond the ridgeline, ready to close the trap once the enemy was fully committed. Enemy forces have breached the outer perimeter at the depot, reported the tactical officer. They believe they've overwhelmed our defenses. Harrison nodded to Sam. Your call, Lieutenant. When do we spring the trap? It was a moment of extraordinary trust, the commander deferring to her judgment on the critical timing of the operation. Sam studied the tactical display, watching the enemy forces advance deeper into the prepared kill zone. Not yet, she said, eyes fixed on the movement patterns. The communication intercept suggested their commander is still holding a reserve force outside the perimeter. We need them all committed before we engage. Minutes ticked by, tension building in the command center. The enemy continued to advance, believing they were succeeding in overwhelming the depot's defenses. Their reserve is moving in, Sam announced, watching the final pieces fall into place. All forces are now committed to the assault. She looked up at Harrison. Now, sir. Execute Phase 2, Harrison ordered. The trap closed with devastating efficiency. Hidden security teams emerged from concealed positions, cutting off the enemy's retreat routes. Simultaneously, helicopter gunships crested the ridge, catching the exposed forces in a withering crossfire. The enemy, believing they were executing a successful assault, suddenly found themselves surrounded and under attack from all sides. Enemy forces attempting to retreat from targets Alpha and Bravo, reported the tactical officer. Our security teams are engaging. And the depot? Harrison asked. Enemy completely contained, came the response. They're pinned down with no escape route. Commander is calling for surrender. A cheer went up in the command center. Sam felt a wave of relief wash over her. The plan had worked perfectly. Her assessment had been accurate, her strategy sound. Lives had been saved because she had seen a pattern that others had missed, and because, finally, she had been listened to. As the operation concluded, reports flooded in from the field. The enemy forces at all three targets had been neutralized or captured, with minimal casualties on either side. It was an unqualified success, a textbook example of intelligence-driven operations executed flawlessly. Commander Harrison addressed the command center as the final reports were confirmed. Outstanding work, everyone. This operation has effectively neutralized a significant threat to our base and forward operating positions. He turned to Sam. Lieutenant Mitchell's intelligence assessment and strategic planning were instrumental to this success. This is what happens when we recognize talent and insight, regardless of rank or age. The acknowledgement sent a ripple of approval through the command center. Officers who had once dismissed Sam now looked at her with undisguised respect. She had proven herself not just once, but repeatedly, demonstrating a level of strategic thinking that transcended her years of service. As the command center transitioned to post-operation activities, Colonel Richards approached Sam. My offer stands, Lieutenant. Special Operations Intelligence could use someone with your capabilities. Sam straightened. Thank you, sir. I'd be honored to accept. Richards nodded approvingly. Report to my office tomorrow at 0900. We'll begin your orientation immediately. As he walked away, Captain Winters joined Sam at the tactical display. Congratulations, Mitchell. Special Operations is quite an assignment. I couldn't have done it without your support, ma'am, Sam replied sincerely. You believed in me when no one else did. I believed in the evidence. Winters corrected her with a smile. The analysis was solid, the thinking was clear. That's all that matters in our line of work, she paused. But I will say, watching everyone who mocked you now falling over themselves to sing your praises has been satisfying. Sam laughed softly. It has been a remarkable transformation. One you earned, Winters emphasized. Remember that. None of this was given to you. You forced them to see your value through sheer competence and determination. As the day wound down and the command center returned to normal operations, Sam found herself standing beside Commander Harrison reviewing the after-action reports. You've had quite a journey these past few days, Lieutenant, Harrison observed. From being ridiculed for your youth to leading one of our most successful counter-operations in months. It's been educational, sir. Sam replied thoughtfully. Harrison smiled slightly. That's one word for it. He turned to face her directly. What have you learned from all this? Sam considered the question carefully. That perception often matters more than reality, until reality forces a change in perception. That competence speaks louder than any credential or number of years served, and that sometimes, being underestimated is the greatest advantage of all. Harrison nodded, satisfied with her answer. Good lessons, all of them. Carry them with you to special operations. Colonel Richards runs a tight unit, but he values insight above protocol. You'll do well there. Thank you, sir. As she left the command center that evening, Sam passed the same officers who had mocked her just days before. Now they nodded respectfully or offered quiet congratulations. The transformation was complete. She was no longer the baby lieutenant to be dismissed, but an intelligence officer whose abilities had been proven beyond question. In her quarters, Sam packed her few personal belongings, preparing for the move to the Special Operations Wing tomorrow. The tactical communication device from Winters sat on her desk, a tangible symbol of her new status and responsibilities. A knock at her door revealed Lieutenant Davidson again, this time with a small group of officers including Specialist Zhang and Corporal Ramirez. We're heading to the rec room to celebrate the operation's success, Davidson said. We thought you might like to join us. Sam looked at the group, the same people who had bet on when she would cry, who had called her kindergarten intelligence, who had dismissed her at every turn. Now they stood at her door, offering inclusion and recognition. I'd like that, she said, closing her packing case. Lead the way. As they walked toward the rec room, Zhang fell into step beside her. So, special operations, huh? That's a big deal. It's a new challenge, Sam replied, but I'm looking forward to it. You deserve it, Zhang said sincerely. What you did these past few days, seeing the pattern, developing the strategy, executing the operation, it was impressive. Really impressive. The simple acknowledgement from someone who had been among her harshest critics meant more than any formal recognition could have. It represented the fundamental shift that had occurred, from being judged by her appearance to being evaluated by her abilities. In the rec room, the celebration was already underway. Officers from multiple departments had gathered, united by the success of the operation. As Sam entered with her group, a small cheer went up, acknowledging her role in the day's events. Captain Winters raised her glass in Sam's direction. To Lieutenant Mitchell, who reminded us all that insight matters more than age and competence speaks louder than years of service. To Lieutenant Mitchell, the room echoed, glasses raised. Sam accepted the toast with a smile, still adjusting to being the center of positive attention after months of dismissal and ridicule. The journey from mockery to respect had been swift and dramatic, but it had taught her invaluable lessons about perception, persistence, and the power of proven competence. As the celebration continued around her, Sam reflected on the extraordinary transformation of the past 3 days. She had arrived at Fort Hawkins as the young lieutenant no one took seriously, and she would leave it as an officer whose abilities had been recognized at the highest levels. The mockery had ceased, replaced by a respect she had earned through determination, insight, and the courage to stand by her convictions when no one else believed in her. The path ahead would bring new challenges, but she would face them with the confidence of someone who had already overcome the most difficult obstacle of all, being seen for who she truly was, rather than judged for how young she appeared to be. The Special Operations Intelligence Wing occupied a separate building on the east side of Fort Hawkins. Its entrance required biometric verification, and the entire facility was shielded from electronic surveillance. As Sam approached at precisely 0900, she felt a familiar flutter of nerves beneath her composed exterior. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The security officer verified her newly issued credentials and ushered her through a series of checkpoints. Colonel Richards is waiting for you in the briefing room, Lieutenant, he informed her as they reached the final door. Sam nodded her thanks and stepped into a world entirely different from the command center she'd left behind. The Special Operations Intelligence Facility was sleek, modern, and oddly quiet. Analysts worked at individual stations, their focus intense and unbroken. The atmosphere was one of concentrated purpose, without the usual military bustle and chatter. Colonel Richards was reviewing documents at the head of a polished conference table. He looked up as she entered, his expression unreadable. "Lieutenant Mitchell. Precisely on time." "Yes, sir." She stood at attention, aware that this was a fresh beginning. Her success at Fort Hawkins had earned her this opportunity. But here she would be starting from scratch. At ease. Richards gestured to a chair. "Your transfer paperwork came through this morning. Officially, you're now part of Special Operations Intelligence. Unofficially, you're about to enter a world that operates by different rules than what you're accustomed to." Sam took the offered seat. "I understand, sir." "Do you?" Richard studied her. Special Operations Intelligence doesn't follow the standard military hierarchy in practice, though we maintain it on paper. Here, insight trumps rank, and results matter more than protocol. Your age is irrelevant. Your previous experience is merely context. What matters is your ability to see what others miss, and to turn that insight into actionable intelligence. That sounds liberating, sir. A hint of a smile crossed Richard's face. It can be. It can also be intimidating. There's nowhere to hide here, Mitchell. No procedures to hide behind when you're uncertain. No superiors to blame when things go wrong. Just your analysis and its consequences. He slid a folder across the table. Your first assignment, take the day to review it. Tomorrow morning, you'll present your initial assessment to the team. Sam opened the folder to find intelligence reports from a region she wasn't familiar with, written in a language she recognized as Farsi. Her surprise must have shown on her face. "Your academy records indicate you're fluent in Farsi," Richards noted. "Is that incorrect?" "No, sir. I'm fluent. I'm just surprised to be working with primary source material so quickly." Richards nodded. "We don't believe in easing people in, Lieutenant. Either you can contribute from day one, or this isn't the right placement for you." He stood. "Major Keller will show you to your workspace and introduce you to the team." A woman appeared in the doorway as if on cue. Major Keller was tall, with short cropped hair and an intensity that seemed to radiate from her like heat. "Lieutenant Mitchell, welcome to SOI." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sam followed Keller through the facility, absorbing details as they went. Unlike the command center's open layout, SOI was compartmentalized, with small teams working in separate spaces on specific projects. "We operate differently here," Keller explained as they walked. "No grandstanding, no ego, no bureaucratic nonsense. Just clear thinking and straight talk. Your work in the command center got Richard's attention, particularly how you spotted a pattern everyone else missed." "I was just doing my job, ma'am." Keller stopped walking and faced her directly. "Rule 1. No false modesty. It's as useless as unearned confidence. You saw what others didn't. Own it. Learn from it. Build on it." Sam straightened. "Understood. Better." Keller resumed walking. "Your team consists of 4 analysts, including yourself. Each brings different expertise to the table. Captain Rhodes specializes in geospatial intelligence. Lieutenant Chen is our communications expert. Specialist Davis handles weapons and tactical analysis. You'll be the linguistic and pattern recognition specialist." They reached a glass-walled room where 3 officers were working at separate stations. Keller pushed open the door. "Team, meet Lieutenant Mitchell, your new linguistic specialist." The 3 looked up, their expressions curious but not unwelcoming. Captain Rhodes, a stocky man with prematurely gray hair, nodded in acknowledgement. "The wonderkin from command. Richards mentioned you'd be joining us." Lieutenant Chen, a slender woman with sharp features, studied Sam with analytical interest. "Your work on the supply route operation was impressive. Pattern recognition in real time is a rare skill." Specialist Davis, younger than the others with an easy smile, stood to offer his hand. "Welcome aboard. Don't mind these 2. They skip the pleasantries and go straight to evaluation. It's their way of saying hello." Sam shook his hand, relieved by the straightforward reception. "Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with all of you." "Your station is there." Keller pointed to an empty desk. "Systems are configured for your access. The team is currently analyzing potential terrorist cell activities in the Sistan region. Your Farsi skills will be particularly valuable for the intercepted communications. With that introduction, Keller left, and Sam found herself alone with her new team. There was an awkward moment of silence before Rhodes spoke up. So command center to SOI in less than a week. That's quite a trajectory. It wasn't planned, Sam replied honestly. I just saw a pattern that needed attention. And stood your ground when no one believed you, Chen added. That part interests me more than the pattern recognition itself. Many analysts spot things. Few have the backbone to push them through a resistant command structure. Sam settled at her station, powering up the systems. Let's just say I developed a thick skin quickly. Word around base is they mocked you for your age until Commander Harrison put them in their place, Davis remarked. Truth to that? Some, Sam admitted, not wanting to dwell on it. But that's behind me now. Rhodes nodded approvingly. Good answer. Past is prologue here, nothing more. You'll find SOI refreshingly different from standard military operations. We care about results, not appearances. As if to demonstrate his point, Rhodes returned to his work without further conversation. Chen and Davis followed suit, leaving Sam to familiarize herself with her new systems and the intelligence folder Richards had given her. The Farsi documents detailed communications between suspected terrorist cells in the Sistan-Baluchistan province of Iran. The translations provided were technically accurate, but lacked cultural context and nuance. Sam found herself absorbed in the work, annotating the documents with additional insights that the original translators had missed. Hours passed in focused silence, each analyst immersed in their respective tasks. Occasionally, one would ask a question or share an observation, but there was none of the casual banter that had filled the command center. This was a different world, intense, purpose-driven, and stripped of unnecessary social dynamics. At midday, Davis stood and stretched. Lunch? Anyone? Mess hall has that mystery meat special today. Pass, Chen replied without looking up. I brought something. Rhodes simply shook his head, eyes still on his screen. Davis looked at Sam. Mitchell? Care to join the land of the living for 30 minutes? Sam realized she hadn't eaten since early morning. Actually, yes, thank you. As they walked to the mess hall, Davis filled the silence with context about SOI. Don't mind Rhodes and Chen. They're brilliant but socially stunted. They'll warm up once they see what you can do. Are they always so intense? Davis laughed. Pretty much. Rhodes hasn't taken a day off in 3 years. Chen sleeps at her desk half the time. They live for the work. And you don't? Sam asked, curious about the apparent outlier on the team. I believe in balance, Davis shrugged. The mind needs rest to function optimally. Besides, I joined the military to serve my country, not to become a machine. It was a refreshing perspective, and Sam found herself warming to Davis's straightforward manner. As they entered the mess hall, she noticed a ripple of recognition pass through the room. Officers who had been at Fort Hawkins during her rapid rise nodded in acknowledgement or whispered to their companions. Seems you're something of a celebrity, Davis observed as they collected their food. Not by choice, Sam replied, uncomfortable with the attention. Own it, Davis advised, echoing Keller's earlier words. You did something remarkable. False modesty won't serve you here. They found a quiet table in the corner, and Davis continued. So, the Sistan intelligence. What's your read so far? Sam considered her response carefully. The translations miss important cultural contexts. There are regional idioms that change the meaning of several key communications. I think the cells are more coordinated than the initial analysis suggests, but less operationally ready. Davis nodded thoughtfully. That tracks with what I'm seeing in the weapons intelligence. Their equipment acquisitions don't match their stated operational goals. Exactly, Sam agreed, feeling a spark of connection. They're talking big but preparing small. The question is why? Maybe that's what Richards wants you to figure out. Davis took a bite of his lunch. First assignments are always tests. He's evaluating not just what you see, but how you interpret it. The insight was helpful, and Sam made mental notes as they finished their meal. When they returned to the SOI facility, She approached her work with renewed focus, looking beyond the obvious patterns to the deeper implications. By evening, she had compiled a comprehensive analysis of the communications, highlighting discrepancies and patterns that suggested a different picture than the one presented in the official reports. The terrorist cells weren't preparing for direct attacks as previously assessed. They were positioning for intelligence gathering, specifically targeting military communications networks. As she was finalizing her notes, Rhodes approached her station. "You've been at it for 12 hours straight," he observed. "Found anything worth sharing?" Sam hesitated, then decided to test her theories. The cells aren't planning attacks. They're establishing an intelligence network to monitor military communications. The weapons acquisitions are cover for signal interception equipment. Rhodes raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Bold assessment. Evidence? Sam walked him through her analysis, pointing out the linguistic patterns and contextual clues that had led to her conclusion. Rhodes listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. "Interesting approach," he said when she finished. "Not what I expected, but your reasoning is sound. Chen should review the signal intelligence components before you present to Richards." It wasn't exactly praise, but coming from Rhodes, Sam sensed it was significant. "I'd appreciate her input." Rhodes nodded and returned to his station. Moments later, Chen approached, having evidently been briefed on Sam's findings. Rhodes says, "You've reinterpreted the cell communications as intelligence gathering rather than attack preparation," she stated without preamble. "Show me." For the next hour, Sam and Chen dug deeper into the communications, with Chen bringing her expertise in signals intelligence to bear on Sam's linguistic analysis. The collaboration was seamless and productive, two minds approaching the same problem from different angles and finding complementary insights. "Your assessment holds up," Chen concluded. "The patterns align with known intelligence-gathering operations, not attack preparations. Davis should review the equipment specifications to confirm." By the time Davis joined their impromptu analysis session, the entire team was engaged, building on Sam's initial insights to develop a comprehensive reassessment of the threat. What had begun as her individual assignment had transformed into a collaborative effort, with each analyst contributing their specialized expertise. When they finally wrapped up near midnight, Sam had a solid presentation prepared for Richards. More importantly, she had found her place within the team, not through social connections or forced camaraderie, but through the natural respect that comes from shared purpose and demonstrated competence. "You should get some rest," Rhodes advised as they were leaving. "Richards will push hard on your assessment tomorrow." He always does with new analysts. "I'll be ready," Sam assured him. "I believe you will," Rhodes replied, the closest thing to a compliment he had offered all day. Back in her quarters, Sam reviewed her notes one final time before allowing herself a few hours of sleep. The day had been intense, but fulfilling in a way her previous assignments had never been. Here, there were no artificial barriers of age or rank, no dismissive attitudes or preconceived notions. There was only the work, the analysis, and the shared commitment to getting it right. The next morning, Sam presented her findings to Colonel Richards and a small group of senior SOI officers. She outlined her reassessment of the terrorist cell's activities, supported by the collaborative analysis her team had developed. In conclusion, she summarized, "These groups are establishing an intelligence network designed to monitor military communications, not preparing for direct attacks as previously assessed. This represents a different but equally serious threat that requires a specialized counter-strategy." Richards listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he remained silent for a long moment, studying her with evaluating eyes. "Interesting analysis, Lieutenant," he said finally. "Completely contrary to 6 months of intelligence assessments from 3 different agencies. That either makes you remarkably insightful or dangerously wrong." Sam held her ground. "The evidence supports this reassessment, sir. The linguistic patterns, equipment acquisitions, and personnel movements all align with intelligence-gathering operations, not attack preparations." "And your team concurs with this assessment?" Richards looked to Rhodes, Chen, and Davis, who had joined the presentation. "We do, sir," Rhodes confirmed. Lieutenant Mitchell's linguistic analysis revealed patterns that previous translations missed. When combined with our specialized assessments, the conclusion is clear. Richards nodded slowly. Very well. I'm approving a full reassessment of our operational approach in the region based on this new intelligence picture. He fixed Sam with a penetrating gaze. Well done, Lieutenant. You've justified my decision to bring you into SOI. The acknowledgement was understated, but significant. In the world of Special Operations Intelligence, results spoke louder than praise, and Sam had delivered results on her first assignment. As the meeting concluded, Major Keller approached Sam. Impressive first outing, Mitchell. Not many analysts successfully challenge established assessments on day one. Thank you, ma'am. The team's input was invaluable. Yes, but you catalyzed the reassessment. That's the kind of intellectual courage we need here. Keller glanced toward Richards, who was speaking with other officers. The Colonel has authorized me to inform you that you're being assigned to Operation Blackstone, effective immediately. Sam blinked in surprise. Blackstone? I'm not familiar with that operation. You wouldn't be. It's our highest priority intelligence initiative, classified above most SOI operations. Keller's expression was serious. The team's been stuck on a particular analysis challenge for weeks. Richards believes your pattern recognition abilities might provide the breakthrough we need. The assignment was both an honor and a tremendous responsibility. Operation Blackstone, whatever it was, clearly represented the pinnacle of SOI's work. I'll do my best, ma'am. We expect nothing less. Keller handed her a new security badge. Report to Secure Analysis Room 3 at 1,400 hours. The team will brief you there. As Keller walked away, Sam's team approached. Blackstone? Davis whispered, eyes wide. That's unprecedented for a new analyst. Chen nodded, clearly impressed. Richards must see something special in your approach. Blackstone has been at an impasse for weeks. What exactly is Blackstone? Sam asked, keeping her voice low. Rhodes shook his head. Can't discuss it here, but it's significant. The kind of operation that changes strategic landscapes. The weight of the assignment settled on Sam's shoulders. In less than a week, she had gone from being the mocked baby lieutenant in the command center to being assigned to SOI's most critical operation. The transformation was dizzying. Any advice? She asked her team. Trust your instincts, Chen offered immediately. They've served you well so far. Don't let the pressure paralyze you, Davis added. Blackstone is high stakes, but it's still just pattern recognition and analysis. Rhodes considered for a moment before answering. Remember why we do this work. Not for recognition or advancement, but because the patterns we identify and the insights we develop save lives. Sometimes thousands of lives. His words resonated deeply with Sam. Beyond the personal vindication of her rapid rise, beyond the professional satisfaction of finding her place in SOI, was the fundamental purpose of her work, protecting others through intelligence that no one else could provide. At 1,400 hours, Sam entered Secure Analysis Room 3 with her new security badge. The room was smaller than she expected, with advanced systems and screens displaying data she couldn't immediately interpret. 4 officers were waiting, all senior in rank and experience. Colonel Richards made the introductions. Team, this is Lieutenant Samantha Mitchell, our new pattern recognition specialist. Lieutenant, meet the Blackstone team. The senior analyst, a colonel named Harrington, studied Sam with open skepticism. With respect, sir, we need experienced analysts on this operation. Lieutenant Mitchell has been with SOI for less than 48 hours. And in that time, she's completely reoriented our understanding of the Sistan region threat, Richards replied evenly. She sees patterns others miss. That's exactly what Blackstone needs right now. Harrington didn't look convinced, but he nodded reluctantly. Very well. Let's get her up to speed. For the next hour, the team briefed Sam on Operation Blackstone, a complex intelligence initiative targeting a sophisticated international terror network with potential access to chemical weapons. The operation had identified most of the network's structure, but had hit a wall trying to locate its leadership and primary weapons facility. "We have thousands of communications intercepts, financial transactions, travel records, and surveillance reports," Harrington explained. "Somewhere in this data is the pattern that will lead us to the leadership and the weapons, but we haven't been able to isolate it." Sam studied the data visualization on the main screen. "What approaches have you tried so far?" "Everything standard and several experimental methods," another analyst replied. "Network analysis, behavioral pattern matching, linguistic fingerprinting, financial flow tracking. We get fragments of patterns but nothing cohesive." Sam nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes when standard methods fail, it's because we're looking at the data through conventional frameworks. The pattern might require a different perspective entirely." "What do you suggest?" Richards asked. Sam considered the challenge. "Let me spend tonight with the raw data. All of it, not just the processed analytics. Sometimes the patterns emerge from unexpected correlations that automated systems aren't programmed to recognize." Harrington looked skeptical. "You want to manually review thousands of data points?" "Not exactly," Sam clarified. "I want to look at how the data was structured and categorized in the first place. Sometimes our analytical frameworks themselves create blind spots." Richards nodded. "Do it. The data will be available on your secure terminal. Report back tomorrow with whatever you find, even if it's just a new approach to consider." That night, Sam immersed herself in the Blackstone data, looking not just at the information itself, but at the frameworks used to organize and analyze it. Hours passed as she explored correlations and patterns, but the standard analysis had overlooked. Near dawn, she found it. A subtle pattern linking seemingly unrelated data points. The network wasn't structured the way intelligence agencies typically expected. Instead of a hierarchical organization with clear leadership, it operated as a distributed system with rotating decision-making nodes. No single leader, no fixed headquarters, but a predictable rotation pattern that could be tracked and anticipated. When she presented her findings to the Blackstone team the next morning, the reaction was a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. "A distributed command structure with rotating authority?" Harrington questioned. "That's unprecedented for a terror network of this sophistication." "Unprecedented but not impossible," Sam countered, highlighting the data patterns that supported her analysis. "The communication patterns, financial transfers, and travel records all align with this model. Most importantly, it explains why traditional targeting methods have failed. We've been looking for a hierarchy that doesn't exist." Richards studied the evidence carefully. "If Lieutenant Mitchell is right, we need to completely recalibrate our approach. Instead of trying to identify and target leaders, we should be identifying the rotation pattern and predicting the next command node." Slowly, the team began to see the merit in Sam's analysis. The distributed structure explained anomalies that had confused them for weeks. More importantly, it offered a path forward, a way to anticipate where operational control would shift next, and potentially intercept critical communications or even weapons components. Over the next 3 days, the Blackstone team worked to validate Sam's theory and develop a targeting strategy based on her insight. The analysis was intense, the stakes enormous, but Sam found herself thriving in this environment where her abilities were valued and her youth was irrelevant. On the 4th day, their predictions were confirmed when surveillance identified a transfer of operational control exactly where Sam's pattern analysis had suggested it would occur. The breakthrough provided critical intelligence that enabled the identification and neutralization of the weapons facility before its deadly products could be deployed. In the aftermath, as the team debriefed in Secure Analysis Room 3, Colonel Richards addressed them with rare emotion in his voice. "What you accomplished here will never be publicly acknowledged, no medals will be awarded, no commendations filed. But make no mistake, your work saved thousands of lives." He looked directly at Sam. "Lieutenant Mitchell, your insight broke a deadlock that had stymied our best analysts for weeks. You saw a pattern that others missed because you were willing to question fundamental assumptions about how these networks operate." The acknowledgement meant more than any formal recognition could have. In this room, among peers who understood the significance of the work, Sam had found her place, not as the young lieutenant who had to prove herself, but as an intelligence analyst whose unique perspective had made a critical difference. As the team dispersed, Harrington approached her. "I owe you an apology, Lieutenant. I questioned your assignment to Blackstone based on your inexperience. I was wrong." "No apology needed, sir," Sam replied. "Skepticism is healthy in our line of work." "I'd have questioned me too." Harrington smiled slightly. "Perhaps. But I've learned an important lesson from this operation. That fresh perspectives sometimes matter more than years of experience, especially when we're facing unprecedented challenges." Outside the secure facility, Sam found Colonel Richards waiting. "A moment of your time, Lieutenant." "Of course, sir." They walked toward the perimeter of the base, the evening air cool and refreshing after days in the windowless analysis room. "You've made quite an impression in your first week at SOI," Richards observed. "From reorienting our system analysis to breaking the Blackstone deadlock, it's an extraordinary beginning." "Thank you, sir. But I want to make sure you understand something important." Richards stopped walking and faced her directly. "What you experienced in the command center, the dismissal based on your age, the mockery, the need to prove yourself against entrenched attitudes, that's not unique to you. It's a pattern that repeats throughout military and intelligence organizations." Sam nodded, uncertain where he was leading. "The difference isn't how people respond to it," Richards continued. "Most either break under the pressure or conform to avoid the conflict. A few, like you, stand their ground and force others to recognize their value through sheer competence. But the rarest response, the one I'm looking for, is from those who transform the experience into wisdom that changes the system itself." "Sir?" "You're being fast-tracked for leadership, Mitchell, not just as an analyst, but as someone who will eventually shape how intelligence operations are structured and how talent is recognized. When that time comes, remember what you experienced. Remember how talent was nearly wasted because of superficial judgments, and make sure the systems you build don't repeat those mistakes." The responsibility was enormous, far beyond anything Sam had imagined for herself. "I will, sir, I promise." Richards nodded, satisfied. "Good. Now, take 48 hours off. Rest, reflect, prepare. When you return, you'll be leading your own analysis team on a new operation. Major Keller will brief you on the details." As Richards walked away, Sam stood for a moment, absorbing the significance of his words. In just 1 week, she had gone from being ridiculed for her youth to being entrusted with leadership responsibilities that would shape operations affecting national security. The journey had been challenging and at times painful, but it had forged in her a deeper understanding of leadership, resilience, and the courage to stand by her convictions when no one else believed in her. She had learned that true respect comes not from age or rank, but from the demonstrated ability to see what others miss, and the courage to speak that truth, regardless of the consequences. As she watched the sun setting over Fort Hawkins, Sam reflected on how quickly perceptions could change when ability was finally given the chance to speak for itself. The mockery had ceased, the dismissals had turned to respect, and the path ahead was now limited only by her own capabilities, rather than others' preconceptions. Lieutenant Samantha Mitchell, once dismissed as too young to be taken seriously, had found her place in a world where insight trumped age and results mattered more than appearance. The transformation was complete, not just in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself, as an intelligence officer whose unique perspective could change the course of operations and save lives that might otherwise be lost. And in that realization was the most powerful lesson of all, that sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage one can have, for it provides the opportunity to exceed expectations in ways that forever change how one is perceived. Her youth, once considered her greatest liability, had become her strength, a fresh perspective that saw patterns others missed precisely because she hadn't been conditioned to see the world through the same limiting frameworks. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.